My wife, Chloe, had a thing for designer handbags. She'd buy a few every single month, but she never used her credit card. Instead, she'd always ask me to Zelle her the money. A friend of mine was over at our place, and he took a close look at Chloe's collection. He turned to me, his face serious. "Sean," he said, "all of Chloe's bags are fakes." My friend pulled a small, handwritten receipt from one of the bags. "And what's more," he added, "she knows she's buying fakes." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. "Honey, can you Zelle me $12,000? I want to buy a new bag." A knot of unease started to tighten in my stomach. Well, I took the handwritten receipt from my friend's hand. The number of bags and the purchase dates on the slip matched everything Chloe had bought last month, except the total on the receipt was $250. Chloe had told me she spent $12,500. "Sean, the craftsmanship on these is terrible," my friend said, sighing as he looked over the collection. "You can't even call them high-quality replicas." He was a professional luxury goods appraiser. There was no questioning his expertise. My phone rang. It was Chloe. "Hey, honey, did you see my text?" I paused, glancing at the closet full of counterfeit bags. "Chloe, cash flow at the company is a little tight this month. Why don't you just put it on your credit card for now?" The line went silent for a moment. "It's okay, honey," she finally said. Her tone completely changed. "I'm not in a huge rush. I can wait until you can send the money." Just a second ago, she was desperate for a new bag, but the moment I mentioned her credit card, she did a complete 180. After my friend left, I sat on the sofa, smoking a cigarette. The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. I'd never actually seen Chloe use any of these bags from the closet. The ones she carried were always the ones I brought back for her from business trips abroad. I gave her a generous allowance every month for living expenses. Money was never an issue for her. Around 7 o'clock, Chloe came home. She was wearing a tight red dress, carrying one of the authentic designer bags I'd given her. She looked surprised to see me. "Honey, you're home early today." I nodded. "Chloe, where did you buy all these bags in the closet?" A flicker of guilt crossed her eyes, but she recovered instantly. "Why are you suddenly asking about that, honey?" I took a drag from my cigarette and exhaled slowly. A friend was telling me how rampant fakes are these days. I was just worried you might have gotten ripped off. "Don't be silly, honey. I buy all my bags from the official boutiques," she said, forcing a syrupy sweet smile. "There's no way they're fake." I kept my expression neutral, struggling to control my anger. Why was she lying to me? Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a faint red mark on her collarbone. She must have noticed me looking because she immediately started scratching at it. "Ugh, my allergies are acting up again," she said. "No wonder it's so itchy. Honey, I'm going to go take some allergy medicine." With that, she rushed off. Her phone, left on a coffee table, lit up with a new text message. "The little one is crying for you again." I stared at the screen in shock, rubbing my eyes to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Chloe and I had been married for 3 years. We didn't have any children. I first met Chloe when she was an employee at my company. She was attractive, a hard worker, and I had a good impression of her. One night, I was working late until after 10, and she brought some takeout to my office. "Mr. Miller, you should eat something," she'd said. "You need to take care of yourself." After I finished eating, I noticed she still hadn't left for the day. It was late, and I worried about her getting home alone, so I offered to drive her. From that day on, she'd check in on me every day, asking if I'd eaten, telling me to get some rest. But whenever anyone else from the company was around, she was strictly professional. On her birthday, she invited me over to her place. I initially declined, but she told me she didn't have any family or close friends in the city and felt lonely celebrating by herself. She insisted she was just making dinner and wanted to share it with a friend. So, I went to her rented apartment. That night, she kept refilling my wine glass. I ended up staying over. When I woke up the next morning, she didn't make a scene or demand anything from me. "Sean, what happened last night was my choice," she said calmly. "Don't worry. I'm not going to cause any trouble for you." And she was true to her word. She never asked for a thing. In fact, she even started to keep her distance from me at the office. My friends told me she had targeted me from the very beginning. I knew, of course, that she was playing hard to get. The truth was, I genuinely liked her, so we started dating. Soon after, I asked her to quit her job and be a full-time homemaker. In our 3 years of marriage, she remained the same attentive, caring woman. The only thing that had changed was her spending. It had become extravagant, especially when it came to handbags. This year alone, she'd spent nearly $1 million on them. My heart hammered against my ribs. Just as I reached for her phone, Chloe came rushing back into the room. She snatched the phone up immediately. Then, a smile spread across her face. "Oh, honey, look," she said, laughing. "Megan sent me a text that was meant for her husband. Her daughter is crying for him again." She held the phone out for me to see. "See? This is what she just sent." I glanced at the screen. It was the same message I had seen. The fact that she was showing it to me so openly seemed to suggest that everything was fine. "Chloe," I said, changing the subject, "I'm free tomorrow. Why don't I go with you to buy that bag? You can take me to your usual spot. I need to pick something up for a client anyway, and you can help me choose." Chloe stumbled back a step, her face visibly paling. "Honey, you want to go with me?" I nodded, confirming. "Is there a problem, Chloe?" "No, it's just you've never liked shopping," she stammered. "It's a little surprising, that's all. I'm feeling a bit tired. I think I'll go take a shower." She grabbed her phone and practically fled into the bathroom. I picked up the handbag she'd left on the sofa. Inside, I found a small, sparkly hair clip and a sheet of cartoon stickers. Things that belonged to a little girl. My brow furrowed. I thought back to the text message. Could it be? Did Chloe not only have another man, but a child with him, too? But we had only been married for 3 years. How could she have had a child with someone else? I did spend about 6 months away on a major project during that time, but the timeline still didn't make sense. Unless she was already pregnant before I left. Maybe I was overthinking it. The hair clip and stickers could belong to her friend Megan's daughter. But that night, Chloe talked in her sleep. She only said one thing. "Honey, you have to be good." For the next morning, Chloe was about to head out with the same designer bag I'd given her. "Chloe, wait," I called out. "That bag doesn't really go with your outfit today. Why don't you switch it out? I think that one over there would look great." I pointed randomly to one of the fakes in her closet. "Honey, I think it looks fine. Let's just head to the store," she said quickly. She was obviously afraid of getting caught carrying a fake into a real boutique. I walked over to the display cabinet and pulled out the counterfeit bag. "Here, carry this one," I said, pressing it into her hands. "You always carry the same few. I'm getting tired of looking at them." I took the authentic bag from her grasp. I could see the muscles in her face tighten. But in the end, she slung the fake bag over her shoulder and walked out the door with me. When we got to the mall, she tried to leave the purse in the car. I grabbed it for her. "Chloe, you forgot your bag." I smiled as I handed it to her. She took it with a painfully awkward expression. Once we were inside the luxury boutique, however, she moved with practiced ease, picking out different styles. "Chloe, did you buy this bag you're carrying at this store, too?" I asked casually. I wasn't sure if she'd forgotten or just hadn't noticed, but the fake she was carrying was the same brand as the store we were in. She blushed and nodded, then quickly tried to change the subject. "Honey, what do you think of this one for your client?" I turned to a sales associate and pointed at Chloe's fake bag. "Do you have this model in stock? I'd like to see one." "Yes, sir, we do. One moment, please." The associate walked over to a display case and returned shortly with a new bag. I frowned, looking back and forth between the two. Even to my untrained eye, they looked completely different. "Why do these two look so unalike?" I asked, raising my voice slightly. "Don't tell me you sold my wife a counterfeit." The sales associate's eyes widened in alarm. She shook her head frantically. "Sir, I can assure you, your wife's bag was absolutely not purchased from our store." Standing beside me, Chloe's face went white as a sheet, all the color draining from her lips. She tugged on my sleeve. "Honey, I remember now," she whispered urgently. "I had a friend pick this one up for me." Her ability to think on her feet was impressive. "Is this bag a fake?" I asked the sales associate directly. The associate was professional. "Sir, I can only say that this bag is not an authentic product from our brand." "Honey, I think my friend must have scammed me," Chloe said, jumping in with an explanation. I let it drop. I bought 2 bags, one for Chloe and one for my client. On our way out, I quietly exchanged a few words with the sales associate. As soon as we stepped out of the store, my phone rang. I pretended to take a call. "Chloe, something's come up at the office." "I have to go," I said. "Can you get home on your own?" She nodded eagerly. "Of course, honey. Go on, don't worry about me." I walked back to the parking garage and put the bags in the car. Then I changed into a different set of clothes, putting on a baseball cap and a face mask. Just as I was about to leave, I got a call from the sales associate. Mr. Miller, your wife just came back in. She tried to return the bag, but when we told her the refund had to go back on your card, she said never mind and left. So it wasn't the bag she loved. It was the cash. I went back into the mall and up to the second floor overlook. I spotted Chloe from a distance. She was on her phone, seemingly looking something up. A moment later, she walked out of the mall and headed towards a consignment shop down the street. As luck would have it was the same shop my appraiser friend owned. I immediately started a video call with him. Chloe walked into the store and, without any preamble, placed the bag on the counter. I just bought this today. Never been used, she said. What's your best offer? My friend calmly invited her to have a seat. Ma'am, please have a seat. I'll need a moment to authenticate the item. Chloe's mouth twitched, and she muttered something under her breath before sitting down. Suddenly, she took out her phone and made a call. Sweetie, be a good girl. Mommy will be there to see you soon. I clenched my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. So she really did have a child. You must be Chloe, right? My friend asked, looking up. I've seen pictures of you. I'm Sean's friend. Chloe's eyes widened in shock. Her phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. I thought you loved designer bags, my friend continued casually. Why are you trying to sell this one? Oh, this. I'm just asking for a friend, she stammered. Actually, we've decided not to sell it after all. Please, don't mention any of this to Sean. With that, she grabbed the bag and fled from his shop. I was waiting at the corner. As she rushed past, I started walking in her direction. Mommy, Mommy. A little girl was shouting and waving excitedly at Chloe. Chloe froze, then ran towards the child. Sweetie, what are you doing here? She asked, panicked. Where's your daddy? I smirked. A perfect little family, a husband and a daughter, all living on my dime. Then, the little girl pointed directly at me. Daddy's right there. I pulled my cap down lower. I glanced to my side and saw another man standing near me. I took a few steps away to create some distance. It was only then that I noticed a woman standing to the man's right. I'd seen her before. It was Chloe's friend, Megan Reed. The little girl ran over and threw her arms around Megan. Mommy, hold me. I frowned. So, the little girl was Megan's daughter? But why did she call Chloe Mommy too? To avoid looking suspicious, I walked into a boba tea shop on the corner and ordered something. Sweetie, Megan said, gently tweaking the little girl's nose. You're supposed to call her Auntie Chloe, not Mommy. Mommy, I want boba tea. The group came into the shop and started ordering. Was this all just a huge misunderstanding? Did Chloe not have a child after all? And the sweetie she was talking to was just Megan's daughter, her goddaughter? I sat down at a table. I hadn't gotten a good look at the man's face earlier. He must be Megan's husband. This was the first time I'd seen him. He seemed quiet and reserved, but he was dressed head to toe in designer brands. Chloe, is that a new bag? Megan asked, her eyes glued to the shopping bag in Chloe's hand. Can I see it? Chloe hesitated for a second, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes, but she mumbled, sure, and handed the bag over. I've been wanting this exact one, Megan gushed. Chloe, why don't you just sell it to me? I'll Venmo you the money right now. Megan wasn't using a privacy screen on her phone, and with my sharp eyesight, I saw the transaction clearly. She sent Chloe a payment, not for thousands of dollars, but for a mere $20, selling a $9,000 bag for $20. Chloe was certainly generous. Chloe looked like she wanted to protest, but in the end, she just nodded silently. Once they got their drinks, the group left together. I followed a short distance behind them and overheard Chloe talking to the little girl. Sweetie, remember, when we're outside, you have to call me. The four of them got into a Mercedes that had to be worth at least $100,000. From the looks of it, Megan's family was very well off, which made her behavior just now all the more baffling. She could clearly afford to buy her own bag. I hailed an Uber and told the driver to follow their car. The Mercedes pulled into a luxury apartment complex. To my surprise, only Megan got out of the car. The Mercedes then drove straight into the underground garage. So, there were only 3 people left in the car. Were they the real family? Was Chloe telling the little girl to call her Auntie when they were in public? Megan, clutching the designer shopping bag, started humming a tune as she walked happily toward the complex exit. I stepped in front of her. Do you have a minute to talk? Megan looked me up and down. Who are you? I pulled down my mask, revealing my face. It's me. The moment she recognized me, she gasped and stumbled backward. San? Sean Miller? What are you doing here? She stammered. Were you the one in the boba shop? I nodded. It seemed she was more observant than I'd given her credit for. I just want to talk, I said calmly. I'll pay you for your time. The mention of money made her eyes light up. We found a quiet cocktail lounge nearby with private booths. So, what do you want to talk about? Megan asked, getting straight to the point. Is that little girl Chloe's daughter? I asked just as directly. Sean, are you kidding me? That's my daughter, she said, but her eyes darted away nervously. She took a sip of her drink and ended up choking on it. I expected as much. Of course she would cover for Chloe. You're pretty understanding then, I said, staring at her intently, letting her husband and daughter go home with another woman. Her hand trembled, spilling her drink. Megan, you need to understand something, I continued in a low voice. Chloe's source of income is me. Without me, she has no money, which means you can't get anything from her either. Megan bit her lip, clearly weighing her options. I didn't press her. I just leaned back and casually took a sip of my own drink. How much will you give me? She finally asked. In the face of money, her flimsy friendship with Chloe was worthless. Name your price. Megan's eyes darted around as she calculated. Suddenly, a sly smile spread across her face. Sean, I don't want money, she said. How about you just owe me a favor? I knew a favor like that would come with a high price tag. I nodded. Deal. 8. Sean, that little girl is Chloe and Ben Carter's daughter, Megan began. Ben was the man you saw earlier. She paused to eat a piece of melon from the fruit plate. My fingers drummed on the table. The girl looked to be about 5 or 6 years old. That meant Chloe had her before we were even married. I let out a bitter laugh and lit a cigarette. I had been played for an absolute fool. Chloe and Ben were childhood sweethearts. They had a wedding ceremony back in their hometown, Megan explained. But they never legally got married. After Chloe had the baby, she moved here to work. I took a long drag from my cigarette, exhaling a cloud of gray smoke. Chloe was far more calculating than I had ever imagined. All that money she'd been getting from me, it was all going to support them. The luxury apartment, the Mercedes, all paid for by me. I couldn't believe that after being so successful in business, I failed so spectacularly in my own marriage. So you've been their cover story all this time? I asked, extinguishing my cigarette and locking my eyes on hers. Well, she was paying for my silence. It was easy money, Megan admitted without shame. So, Sean, are you going to divorce her? Her gaze on me was intense, almost hungry. She subtly pulled down the collar of her shirt and fanned herself with her hand. Wow, it's getting a little warm in here. Under the table, her foot brushed against mine. Oh, sorry, Sean, she said, her voice breathy. Did I kick you? I knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just after a payout. She was after everything I had. Like a trax, I suppose. Both she and Chloe were master manipulators. Fine, I decided to play along. Megan could be a very useful piece in the game I was about to start. Simply divorcing Chloe and getting my money back wouldn't be enough. That would be letting her and her childhood sweetheart off way too easily. No, I had a much bigger gift in mind for my wife. 9, I fiddled with my lighter, clicking it open and shut. Megan, a divorce is definitely happening, I said. And I'll get remarried. After all, I make money to spend it on my wife. At that, Megan almost shot out of her seat with excitement. I paused before adding, but I'm not a fan of materialistic women. By the way, Megan, I need you to do something for me. How much do you want for it? Megan immediately started waving her hands, shaking her head like a bobblehead. I knew she had taken my hint. Sean, I don't want any money, she said earnestly. Of course I'll help you. To be honest, I've been sick of Chloe for a long time. I wanted to tell you the truth so many times, but I never had the chance. She was a total opportunist, swaying whichever way the wind blew. I put the lighter down and nodded. Megan, here's the plan. As I laid it out for her, the color drained from Megan's face, and her eyes grew wide with uncertainty. Sean, are you really asking me to do this? I gave her a firm, reassuring look. Megan, I'm just asking you to act out a part, I said softly. And for what it's worth, I think you're much more beautiful than Chloe. Don't worry, Sean, she said, her confidence returning instantly. I guarantee I'll get the job done. Just as I was about to leave, Megan called out to me. She handed me the designer bag Chloe had given her earlier, a gesture to prove she wasn't materialistic. I smirked. She was going to regret that. 10. Chloe came home around 8 that evening. looking as happy as could be. Apparently, her little family of 3 had a wonderful day. "Chloe, where's the bag you bought today?" I asked. The smile on her face froze for a split second before she quickly replaced it. "Oh, honey, I ran into Megan today. She loved it so much, I just gave it to her," she said breezily. "By the way, you haven't given me my allowance for this month yet." I picked up my glass of whiskey from the coffee table and took a slow sip. I swirled the amber liquid before turning my gaze to her. "Chloe, I just closed a major investment deal today. Tied up all my liquid cash," I said flatly. "You'll have to wait a bit longer." She looked like she wanted to argue, but ended up just nodding. "Oh, by the way, Chloe, I saw Megan and her husband the other day," I added casually. "They were acting like a couple of teenagers in love, kissing and hugging right there in public." Chloe's eyes went wide, and she stumbled slightly. "Honey, you must have been mistaken." I shook my head, dismissing her doubt. "No, I'm absolutely sure it was them. Anyway, I have some documents to review. I'll be in my office." With that, I walked into my home office and closed the door. From her reaction, I knew she believed me. She looked completely rattled. I sat down at my desk and pulled up the feed from the home security cameras I'd had installed that morning. They covered nearly every angle of the house. On the monitor, I saw Chloe pacing back and forth in the living room, her brow furrowed in thought. She kept glancing up towards my office. After a few minutes, she finally picked up her phone and made a call. Ben put her daughter on the phone. It seemed she was planning to get the truth out of the child. A direct confrontation with the adults would only be met with denials. "Sweetie, be a good girl and take the phone to your room. Mommy wants to tell you a secret." I lit a cigarette. Everything was going exactly as I had planned. 11, "Sweetie, does Auntie Megan live with you guys? Does Auntie Megan talk to Daddy a lot? Sweetie, what did you just say?" Suddenly, Chloe's voice shot up several octaves, her eyes turning bloodshot. I guess she had just found out what she was looking for. To be honest, I had sensed something was off between Megan and Ben when I saw them. I suspected their act wasn't just an act. After Chloe hung up, she furiously dialed another number, but it seemed no one was picking up. "You backstabbing bitch, Megan," she seethed. "You actually went through with it. Just wait until I get my hands on you tomorrow." She started typing furiously on her phone, no doubt sending a string of angry texts to Megan. I took a slow drag from my cigarette, exhaling a perfect smoke ring. A war between the two women was about to begin. About half an hour later, I got a call from Megan. "Sean, I'm about to burn my bridges with Chloe for you," she said, her voice dripping with drama. "We've agreed to meet tomorrow. I'm going to lay all the cards on the table then." I flicked the ash from my cigarette, my eyes still fixed on the security monitor. Megan, I won't forget this. Though I couldn't see her, I could imagine the triumphant smile on her face. After we hung up, she sent me the name and address of the restaurant. That night, I slept in the guest room. I left early the next morning, sending Chloe a text. "Chloe, I have to go to Boston for the day. Won't be back tonight." She replied almost instantly. "Okay, honey, drive safe." With me out of town, she could now confront Megan without any reservations. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Chloe. "Honey, why isn't my credit card working?" I had canceled it the day before. "Chloe, are you trying to buy something?" "Yes, I'm at the boutique trying to buy a bag, but my card was declined." "Chloe, my client just walked in. I have to go." I hung up before she could say another word. It seemed she had shifted her strategy. Now she planned to buy bags with a credit card and then sell them for cash at a discount. Even though she'd lose some money in the process, it was still a source of income. To think that even now, she was still so desperate to get money for Ben. It wasn't just love. She was completely blinded by it. She was a completely different person with him than she was with me. 12 at 6 o'clock that evening, Megan and Ben were already at the restaurant. They hadn't brought the little girl with them. I was in disguise, sitting at a corner table with a clear view of their booth. Chloe arrived, teetering on high heels, a storm brewing on her face. She walked straight to their table and slammed her hand down on it. Her eyes were wide and furious, veins popping on her forehead. "Megan Reed, you backstabbing whore. What was all that crap you said to me yesterday?" Ben Fronet. "Chloe, what's with the attitude? Sit down, you're making a scene." So, the ever-silent Ben finally speaks. From his tone, it was clear he had no idea that his affair with Megan had been exposed. Chloe let out a cold, bitter laugh and sat down across from him. "Ben, you're quite the actor, aren't you? You've been playing me for a fool." Chloe, what are you talking about? What have I been faking? Ben asked, still feigning innocence. Suddenly, Megan looped her arm through Ben's. She shot a provocative smirk at Chloe. That's right, Chloe. Ben and I are together now. So what? She taunted. You even had your own daughter call me mommy. I guess that makes him my husband, doesn't it? The color drained from Ben's face. He quickly pried Megan's hand off his arm. Megan, what the hell are you saying? He hissed. Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you're talking about? Ben was genuinely panicked. After all, Chloe was his cash cow. Without her, there would be no more Mercedes, no more luxury apartment. But Megan didn't stop. She doubled down. I'm not insane. Ben, are you even a man? She yelled. That's not what you were saying in bed the other night. You told me Chloe Taylor was nothing but a stupid idiot who just funnels money to you. I leaned my chin on my hand, watching the drama unfold with great interest. Megan wasn't lying. I was sure Ben had said those exact words. Though, I wasn't much better off than Chloe. After all, it was my money they were spending. 13, Megan. Ben, how could you do this to me? Chloe's eyes filled with tears, her voice cracking with emotion. Suddenly, she grabbed a glass of water from the table and threw it in Megan's face. You bitch. Seducing my husband, she screamed. I'm going to kill you. She lunged across the table, grabbing a fistful of Megan's hair. Soon, there were a tangled mess of flying fists, scratching nails, and kicking feet. Ben tried to pull them apart, but only ended up with deep scratches on his face and arms. Chloe, Ben sleeps in my bed every night. Megan shrieked. He calls me his wife. That was the last straw. Chloe grabbed a heavy glass ashtray from the table and raised it high, aiming for Megan's head. But Ben was faster. He wrenched the ashtray from her grasp. Chloe stared at him, her face a mask of disbelief, her hands trembling. Ben, you're protecting her? Chloe, that ashtray could have killed her. Suddenly, Chloe stopped struggling and let out a wild, hysterical laugh. Fina, Ben, so you care about her now. In a flash, she snatched a steak knife from the table and lunged at him. The difference in their strength was too great. The knife only managed to slice a deep gash across his forearm. Bright red blood began to flow. Ben's face went pale. Chloe, is this enough? He gasped. I don't owe you anything anymore. It's over. I won't see Megan again. I shook my head slightly. Even now, Ben couldn't let go of the money. Suddenly, Megan, who was still on the floor, doubled over and started retching. A woman at a nearby table, a classic busybody, piped up, "Oh my, could she be pregnant?" That's exactly what I was like when I was pregnant. Always nauseous. The three of them froze, their expressions a mixture of shock and confusion. Megan looked up at the ceiling as if trying to do a mental calculation. Then, her eyes widened in panic as she looked at Ben. Ben, she whispered, I haven't had my period in 3 months. I think I might really be pregnant. I've been craving sour things lately. Her words hit Chloe like a lightning bolt. Megan, stop joking around, Ben said, clearly unable to accept the possibility. If you really are, you'll have to get rid of it. It was clear he had no intention of letting Megan keep the baby. I took a sip of my lemonade, brushed a non-existent piece of lint from my sleeve, and took off my hat. It was time for me to make my entrance and add a little more fuel to the fire. 14, I walked slowly and deliberately to their table. Chloe's hair was a mess, her face and neck covered in red scratches. Her eye makeup was smeared, giving her the look of a raccoon. She stared at me, her pupils dilated in shock, her voice trembling. Honey, you're not in Boston? What are you doing here? She looked terrified, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Megan bit her lip and stared at me, her eyes filled with a strange mix of regret and longing. She opened her mouth as if to explain, but I gave her a slight shake of my head, and she obediently fell silent. Ben stood there, his fists clenched, his jaw tight. He didn't say a word. I cleared my throat and let my gaze drift over the three of them before finally settling on Chloe. Why I'm here isn't important, I said, my voice dangerously calm. What's important, Chloe, is that you apparently have another husband. A wave of gasps and whispers swept through the restaurant. The other diners were now fully invested in the free entertainment. I could hear snippets of their conversations. Wow, a free soap opera with dinner. Did you hear that? The information overload is insane. This guy got cheated on big time. Chloe's lips moved, but no sound came out. To my surprise, it was Ben who stepped forward. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, trying to sound reasonable. "Chloe and I used to be together, but we broke up a long time ago." Even now, he was still trying to hold on to his meal ticket. I hooked a nearby chair with my foot, pulled it over, and sat down, crossing my legs. I looked Ben up and down, taking in his average face, his unremarkable build. There was absolutely nothing special about him. "Chloe, what do you even see in him?" I asked, my voice laced with contempt. Was it really worth spending so much money to support this guy? You could have found a dozen younger, better-looking guys who would have been thrilled to be with you. The color rose and fell in Ben's face like a broken traffic light. "Honey, I was wrong. I was just confused for a moment," Chloe pleaded, grabbing at my sleeve. I shoved her hand away. "Chloe, if you're really sorry," I said, picking up my lighter and flicking it open and closed, "then show me." My gaze shifted back and forth between her and Ben. 15 crack. Chloe slapped Ben across the face with all her might. A bright red handprint immediately bloomed on his cheek. The lighter in my hand clicked open, then shut. Click, clack. "Is that all the sincerity you have, Chloe?" Without another word, she started slapping him again and again, so hard that her own hand turned red. Ben just stood there and took it, not saying a word. "Honey, is this enough?" Chloe asked, a desperate, fawning smile on her face. I ignored her and turned to Ben. "She hit you," I said calmly. "Aren't you going to hit her back? If you do a good enough job, I might consider not coming after you for the money she spent on you." Chloe stared at me in horror. "Honey, what are you saying? How can you let him hit me?" Ben's fists were clenched, his eyes darting back and forth as he weighed the consequences. "The amount of money she spent on you over the years is not a small sum," I added pointedly. That was all it took. In a flash, Ben's hand shot out and connected with Chloe's face. He put his entire body into it, sending her sprawling to the floor, a trickle of blood appearing at the corner of her mouth. When he saw me nod in satisfaction, he started hitting her again, relentlessly. "Ben, are you crazy?" Chloe's screams echoed through the restaurant. When a bystander looked like he was about to intervene, I shot him a glare. "This is a family matter. I suggest you stay out of it." The man immediately backed off, putting his phone away. Ben ignored Chloe's cries, continuing to hit her until he was exhausted and out of breath. Megan, who had been watching from the sidelines, was completely dumbfounded. "Mr. Miller, is this satisfactory?" Ben asked, a faint, respectful smile on his face. By now, Chloe was a mess of bruises and blood. I could barely recognize her. "Chloe, is this the man you love?" I asked, leaning my chin on my hand and staring down at her with cold contempt. "Ben, you bastard," she shrieked, launching herself at him like a wild animal. "I swear, I will never let you get away with this." She sank her teeth into his shoulder, refusing to let go. I stood up and brushed the dust from my pants. "Chloe, we can still talk," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Get every penny you spent on him back, and then we'll see." With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant. There's no point in backing a rabid dog into a corner. I had a feeling this was far from over between those two. I had only gone a few steps when Megan came running after me, out of breath. "Sean, I'm not really pregnant," she panted. "I was just acting back there. Birds of a feather, I thought. They all deserved each other." "Megan, do you really think I'm that easy to fool?" I said, not bothering to turn around. "My advice to you? Get your hands on whatever cash you can, and get out now." I waved a dismissive hand and continued towards the parking lot. Behind me, I heard Megan slap her thigh in a moment of realization. I have to go back and grab anything that's worth something. I shook my head and smiled. Their entire world revolved around money. 16 after that night at the restaurant, Chloe didn't come home. A few days later, though, she called me. "Honey, I'll have all the money by today," she said, her voice flat. "It will be in your account later tonight. I have a few more things to take care of here. I'll be home in a couple of days." She hung up before I could say anything else. I was surprised she had actually managed to get the money back. That evening, a large sum was wired into my bank account. The amount was staggering. It was nearly identical to what she had spent on Ben over the years. I was curious where they had gotten that kind of cash. Even if they sold the apartment and the car, they would still be short. So I called Megan. "Sean, have you changed your mind?" she asked, her tone flirty. "Do you know what Chloe and Ben have been up to?" I heard a scoff on the other end of the line. "So you're calling for information? Fine. Since you gave me that tip last time, I'll tell you. Ben and Chloe sold everything of value. Ben also took out a bunch of high-interest online loans. I heard he was planning on taking his daughter and moving abroad. My fingers drummed on my desk. So that was her plan. She intended to get back in my good graces and then continue to support her lover and child from afar with my money. Anyway, I have to go, Megan said abruptly. I have a date with my new sugar daddy. She hung up. Something about her story still didn't feel right. I hired a private investigator to look into it. The truth was even more shocking than I had imagined. It wasn't just loans. Ben had gone back to his old profession, being a kept man. He had found a wealthy older woman who was showering him with money. He and his daughter hadn't gone abroad. He couldn't bear to leave his new benefactor. 17 that night, Chloe finally came home, looking exhausted. Chloe, is everything taken care of? I asked. She dropped the act. Yes, it's all done. From what my investigator had told me, Ben had lied to Chloe, telling her that he and their daughter were leaving the country. He wanted to keep both his golden geese. I picked up my tablet and handed it to her. I have some photos for you to see. She gave me a confused look before turning her attention to the screen. The first few pictures were of her daughter playing in the yard of a house in their old hometown. Ben had secretly sent the child back to his parents. Chloe, these photos were taken today. Her eyes widened in shock. That's impossible. I saw them off at the airport myself. If you don't believe me, you can go back to your hometown and see for yourself, I said calmly. But don't be in such a hurry. The main event is coming up. I smirked and swiped to the next set of photos. Chloe's face grew darker with each picture. She zoomed in on one, her knuckles white as she gripped the tablet. These were taken yesterday, I said. Ben seems to be quite fond of her. I took the tablet back and lit a cigarette. I pointed to a sticky note on the coffee table. I didn't say a word. It had the name of a hotel and a room number written on it. Chloe glanced at the note. Understanding dawned in her eyes, quickly replaced by a murderous rage. Honey, I'll be right back, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. As she left, she snatched the sharp fruit knife that I had placed right next to the note. I took a long drag from my cigarette and watched her go, a cold smile on my face. Then, I used the cigarette to light the corner of the sticky note, watching as it burned to ash. Tonight was not going to be a quiet one. Later that evening, Chloe burst into the hotel room where Ben was with a wealthy woman. Ben, drunk and disoriented, didn't even see it coming. Chloe stabbed him. The rich woman was so terrified she had a heart attack on the spot and was rushed to the hospital. Ben's abdominal wound wasn't fatal, but the damage was permanent. He would never be able to have more children, and his career as a kept man was definitively over. Chloe was convicted of aggravated assault and sentenced to prison. I visited her once to have her sign the divorce papers. Sean, she said, her eyes burning with hatred. That knife you put next to the note on purpose, didn't you? I feigned confusion. Chloe, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you mean. What note? With that, I turned and walked away. After Ben was released from the hospital, he vanished. Rumor has it he was tricked into a situation in Southeast Asia, the kind you don't come back from. As for who arranged it, nobody knows. Chloe suffered a brain hemorrhage in prison and is now in a persistent vegetative state. As for Megan, a botched plastic surgery left her disfigured, unable to be seen in public. My company continued to grow, and I bought a new villa. 2 years later, while on a business trip abroad, I met my soulmate.